Well, good morning to everybody. I think we have a critical mass. We're going to get started. I'm not going to have everybody introduce themselves, but you can all see who's participating if you click on the participant column, or you can scroll on the top where some people are on video and some people are not to see who's here and who's joined us this morning. As a reminder, I know we've said it a couple times, especially if you come on, please mute your microphone on your computer or on your phone, depending on how you called in, and it makes it a lot easier for everyone. The first thing, now that I've silenced everybody, I would like to take a moment of silence for a colleague of ours who passed away in the last several weeks. Lee is not on, but one of his partners, Chris McCormick, those of us in the legal community know him very well. One of the wittiest people out there. I mean, compared to him, I'm a dimwit. So, and he had this knack for expressing himself, expressing his opinions, and it was reflected in his monthly or daily or even weekly columns on the legislative session, which maybe because the session was out and he didn't have a forum that he decided to go up to have a forum up above. But Chris was an unbelievable lawyer, an unbelievable colleague, and he will certainly be missed. So we're not saying anything anyways except me. We'll just have a moment of silence for Chris. Thank you. And Lee was going to be our leadoff hitter today, in the spirit of baseball, which many of us are missing. But picking up will be our air team, Steve Eidelman and Dave Krochko. And Marcy has put up their presentation, and I'll let them take it from here.
Thank you, Chuck. This is Steve Eidelman. Can everybody hear me? Yep. Okay, good. Hi, we're going to do an air update, Dave and I, for NOx-RACT in Connecticut. NOx-RACT is it's the regulation of Connecticut State Agencies, Section 22A 174-22E, which is titled Controlled Nitrogen Oxide Emissions from Fuel Burning Equipment at Major Stationary Sources of Nitrogen Oxide. And you can understand why we call it NOx-RACT. If you're familiar with RACT, it's reasonable available control technology. And what they're looking to do with this regulation is they want to regulate major stationary sources of NOx and also minor sources at for high emitting units of NOx. Right now we're in phase one. Phase one started in 2018. It's going to May 2023. Phase two, which is going to be a concern for facilities in Connecticut, its initial compliance date is June 1st, 2023, and that goes out to, actually they say continuing thereafter, so I guess that's infinity and beyond. And what they're going to be regulating at the major sources are boilers, turbines, and any other fuel burning sources that have a maximum rated capacity greater than 5 million BTUs an hour. And also they'll be regulating IC engines, which are greater than 3 million BTUs an hour. For minor sources, it's whenever a source, a individual fuel burning device has emitted over 137 pounds a day in the severe areas, or 274 pounds a day of NOx in a serious area. You can go to the next slide, please. Okay, great. What are the concerns? Now, if you have a new fuel burning device, say like a new boiler, this probably won't impact you at all, because if you recently got permitted, you had to comply with BACT, which is Best Available Control Technologies, which will be more stringent than RACT. But for existing boilers, and other fuel burning devices, turbines, and also internal combustion engines, the existing ones are going to have more of a problem, especially older existing ones. You might find that you have to install flue gas recirculation, low NOx burners. There's also water steam injection, and you can do a lot with boiler and burner reconfiguration. And hopefully you don't have to do that on controls. It looks like for boilers, more than likely you don't have to do add-on controls. But for other sources such as turbines, that might be an issue in the future for you. It's very complicated. There's so many different options. It's really source specific, and it's nice to have a contractor or a consultant come in that is a combustion expert to try and help you with your boiler. Some of the compliance options are also available that the DEP has presented in Section 22E. They're offering various options, such as 40% reduction off of the baseline, unit retirement. There's also, if you have oil as a backup and you're subject to the to the boiler NESHAP, you can have that backup fuel exempted out of the controls and the limits. And then also there's case-by-case compliance options where you can possibly prove that it's technologically or economically infeasible to put in a control device. Maybe your boiler isn't set up so you can put in FGR. Takes a lot of space up in a powerhouse. But if you notice the 40% reduction, you'll see that in the case-by-case compliance and other compliance options. And that looks like what the DEP is after, that they want a 40% reduction across the whole state to try and get into attainment for ozone. And NOx is a precursor with VOCs to form ground level ozone. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. Now, you're Steve and Dave anxious, and we're talking about this right now because the due date is June 1st, 2023. And you, for proving compliance with phase 2, you're going to test when you're required to. And there's, if you notice a little footnote on the bottom, there's a period of time from May 2023 till June 2025 to test to prove that you're compliant. But the problem is, if you can't comply with phase 2 limits as of 2023, you have to know about it by January 1st, 2021. Because and also that's for a NOx racked compliance plan, the due date. There's 2 due dates, and it depends on your compliance option that you want, that you're going to use as an option. So you have to know pretty much right now what way you're going to comply. If you're going to comply, if you're not going to comply, what kind of compliance option are you going to go for? Some of the compliance options are very detailed. We just briefly mentioned before about 40% reductions off of the baseline year. When you read through the regulation, it's far more complicated. So you really have to start right now and find out what you're going to do for compliance, how you're going to comply. You have to fill out the compliance plan. It's about a 14-page form, and some of the more technical, complicated options will take more than 14 pages to describe to the DEP. And again, it's just, we wanted to give everybody a heads up about this because it is a little bit of a fake out. You think, oh, 2023, I don't have to worry about that for 3 more years. You should know right now what your boilers emit for actual emissions and what you can do to comply with the proposed limits. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. Dave, did you have anything to add for regulatory updates?
Yeah, so I guess the only other thing that we'll touch on, I guess, is the GPLPE regs that we've been talking about for a while. Those got signed off by the AG's office. So that program's moving along. So it has to go through regs review before those GPLPE replacement rules can be finalized. So that's the next step. I guess the interesting thing is I don't know when the next, when that committee will actually have their next meeting. I don't know if there's one scheduled. They've canceled the last one just because of COVID related just issues. So the tricky thing is these rules have to be finalized by November in order to not have some gap period between the expiration of the GPLP registrations that are active right now. And, that seems like not an issue, but if they can't get it through regs review because they don't have meetings or there's some issue they have with, with the regulation as proposed, then, November is not that far away when you take all that into account. So we'll have to keep an eye on it and see how that develops. And for those that are going to be affected by that, you should definitely go to the eReg site and check out the response to comments. Deep outlined their interpretation of and clarified how they view a lot of the provisions in the proposed regs, particularly with how a source would need to track their ongoing emissions, what types of monitoring needs to be done, what type of calculations they have to do. And they're very prescriptive in the regs, and I think they are. I think a lot more people than Deep thinks are going to need to, submit and get approval for a site-specific emission compliance and calculation program that to allow uses of different either emission factors or test data or things like that that don't meet the specific criteria that Deep outlines in their regs. So so definitely take a look at that. It gets down to details like what types of units can use certain emission factors and what you can and can't use to track your things like fuel consumption, and it's there's a lot of detail there. So definitely something to look into if you're going to be covered. But that's all I think we got. So Steve, is there anything else you wanted to add on the GPLP front?
No.
Like no.
Nope. The incinerators?
Okay. Oh,
okay.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so yeah.
Oh, never mind. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh, just one quick update. The incinerator permitting carve-out regulation is going to be moving along. I think it's with Marilee submitted it to I think the governor's office for approval, and then once that gets cleared, it'll be released for public comment. And that's it.
Does anybody on the call have a question for our AIR team? If so, feel free to open up your screen, open up your audio and video if you're that ambitious. Going once? Gone. All right.
I think somebody had texted something or chatted. It says, if you will not be affected, less NOx, do you have to file something saying the new regs don't apply? No, you don't. Do you agree, Dave?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that must have been just to you guys. I didn't see that. And if you do have questions, feel free to use the chat function and send it to everyone so that we can see it, or send it to select people if you don't want to have other people know that you're asking that, whatever your choice is. So next up will be our waste team, Harold Blindeman and Mark Bobman. And I'll turn it over to them.
Hi, everybody. It's Harold. How is everybody this morning? If Mark's on the phone, Mark's been having lots of fun dealing with solid waste issues, and I thought it'd be helpful if he gave everybody an update this morning if he's on the phone. Otherwise, I'll just continue with our report. Hearing no Mark, I can just say that he's told me that he has been dealing with this issue of solid waste with the virus, and that it has been a situation that has caused that is of increasing complexity for him. He wasn't on the call last week and or last month, and hope to have an update from him when we convene again. As far as the waste task summary report, we've provided summaries of the latest EPA guidance for you on enforcement and on site field work. We've provided a summary with respect to the one change update that we have for you is on page 4. There's some additional guidance on the DEEP website. Thanks, Marcy. With respect to hazardous waste generators and hazardous waste transfer facilities, it boils down to a lot of discretion on the part of the department, but it's on a special web page. You have to go to the hazardous waste to find the guidance. It's not on the main DEEP webpage. And just as a comment as to the DEEP COVID-19 webpage, the DEEP webpage is one of the best in New England. If you go looking at some of the other agency websites, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, they're just not, the guidance is not necessarily all in one place. The DEEP has put its guidance mostly all in one place, and it's pretty clear. It's easy to work with, and that's just coming from my back and forth with the different agencies in New England and New York and New Jersey. Update on with respect to what page do we have, Marcy? Page 11. With respect to the Transfer Act, the last pronouncements from Betsy was that there apparently has been consensus on the Transfer Act changes that were part of the legislative package. That part of the Transfer Act changes, when the legislature convenes, if there is consensus, it stands a chance of possibly getting passage this year, but there has to be legislative consensus. Nothing that's going to be controversial is going to be passed this year. As a result, the release-based portion of the bill is going to be deferred till next year. DEEP indicates that they will be sending out additional language for consideration by stakeholders, including CBIA. They indicated that would be coming out soon, quote unquote, and the same soon applies to the Wave 2 regulations that the hearing officer report is expected late May, early June is my latest understanding, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. And if Mark has joined us, Mark, feel free to chime in. Otherwise, Chuck, that's pretty much it for me.
I don't think he's on, and we are a bit early for our DEP crew, DEP crew. So before we turn it over to the water team, does anybody else on the call have anything that they would like to share with the group here this morning? If so, just feel free to pop on and start talking, and or identify yourself to Marcy and she can pull you up. Silence of the lambs. Okay, well, we'll at least turn it over for the water updates, and I'll let Debbie do that, and then Wojtek will be taking it from there.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. Just a couple of updates this month for us. Just wanted to point out that the miscellaneous general permit revision discussions with the technical difficulties. Can you all hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. So ongoing negotiations regarding the miscellaneous general permit updates. So as a reminder, this is the deep, not delegating, but requesting that the POTWs perform the enforcement of the miscellaneous general permit discharges. The state wants to maintain coverage and enforcement of the SIU general permit, currently known as the categorical general permit, and then wants to require that the POTWs review all the data and do the inspections for the waste streams covered under the miscellaneous. There was a WebEx meeting held on April 14th. So my understanding is that those negotiations are still ongoing. This permit does expire in September of this year. So stay tuned. I know a lot of people are covered by the miscellaneous. Is somebody trying to ask a question? Okay, sorry. So also just want to point out about the 3I permit modifications. Deep met with stakeholders March 3rd. They want to try and streamline that process. So they are getting bogged down with all the requests for modifications and want to try and streamline the process. So we provided the state with some examples of what should consider significant and what should not be considered significant. So they're kind of mulling that over, and hopefully will come back to us in early June. Also, just wanted to point out the general permit for stormwater associated with commercial activity expired yesterday. The state will be reissuing without modifications for 2 years, no re-registration required. And then just wanted to point out that EPA and the Department of the Army has published the Navigable Waters Protection Rule, and that defines waters of the United States. So that's, we've been talking about that for a while now, so that has been updated. Further court proceedings are expected, but it is published. And then EPA has issued a out for public comment a proposed 2020 multi-sector general permit for stormwater discharges from industrial activity. from what we're hearing, we expect that Connecticut's industrial stormwater is going to closely resemble this. So that's available for comment through, I believe they extended it through June. And that's all I have. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, this is Jason at Clean Energy. Can you hear me, Debbie?
Hi. Yep.
General permit, miscellaneous general permit that is still being worked on. In the past or recently, has Oz given any, like, we need to get this done by June or July? What's the month that if they don't get it done, they're going to, any feelings?
So the last time I talked to him was in early March. And he has basically said, if we don't come to a resolution, quote, soon, we're going to go to hearing. He is of the opinion that this needs to be resolved prior to September. So, you know, historically, we would have had to, this would be something that we would need to register for like 90 days before the expiration date. So that's coming up quick. I'll hope to have a better update from him next month. I'll reach out to him and see specifically what his plan is. But the last time I talked to him in March, it was, I think we're just going to have to go to hearing.
So hearing versus another extension is probably more likely?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Yep. And basically what my understanding is that, right, the POTWs don't want to own this. And so they are pushing back and essentially stalling. And Ozzy said he wasn't clear on what their issues are. And it's amazing to me, but he was under the impression that, you know, POTWs had a good idea of who their universe was, who their industrial users are, and they really don't. So I will connect with Ozzy on that before our June meeting.
Okay, thanks for the update.
Yep.
Hi, Debbie, it's Marcy.
Hey.
I just wanted to let you know that DEP is now on.
Great.
If you would like to introduce or have Wojtek do any updates.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, yes, this is Wojtek. As Marcy indicated, we've been working with Deep to try to schedule this meeting for some time now, and we finally were able to get Doug Hoskin and his team. He's the assistant director at DEP, and he's going to provide us an update on work that has been done, if I recall it correctly, maybe 2 years ago now. The reporting forms for the entire program have been updated and released to the public, and the reporting scheme became effective beginning of this year. So anybody that is covered under this program, which is the water diversions registration, should be collecting their data and getting it ready for reporting beginning of next year for this calendar year. So that's a little bit of a background, and without further ado, I would like to introduce Doug Hoskin from DEP. And Doug, thank you for being here with us.
Yes, can everybody hear me okay? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to double check. Thanks, Wojtek. Again, my name is Doug Hoskins with the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And I am a lead analyst for the diversion program, not an assistant director. However, the assistant director for my section is joining us for this presentation, Phil Trowbridge. And I want to thank CBIA for finally getting me into one of your meetings after persevering for a little bit, given the challenging circumstances that we've had in the past. And I thank you very much for sticking to it and getting me on your roster. I really appreciate it. I think I have some good information for you. And I've been with DEEP for almost 27 years now. And as I said, a lead analyst with the diversion program for about 18 years. Some of my other duties involve taking a role on a subcommittee of the State Water Planning Council for drought considerations. And I'm also on an interagency work group, the State Interagency Drought Work Group, and a little bit of work with our greener.gov lead by example, executive order number 1 that is currently performing. And you may have heard about that in the past. Getting our state agencies to lead by example in wastewater and greenhouse gas emission issues. So I'll see if I can control the slide here, hopefully, yeah. So we're going to advance on. Just to give you an idea of the agenda, I want to take about 20 minutes to go through some slides, so I'm going to be moving pretty quickly and then have time for some questions. First, I just want to describe the unit I work with to give you some perspective on what we do beyond reporting diversions, and then let you know what is a consumptive diversion, with emphasis on the word consumptive as opposed to non-consumptive. So we're talking about consumptive diversions here. And then why require reporting now? As you'll see, we've had that ability for quite some time, but we're just getting to it now. Then I'm going to review our current reporting program, what we've already been doing for permits as opposed to registrations. And I'll get into that a little bit. Then show you the statute that allows us to do this. And go over the new reporting form that Wojtek mentioned. And that with his contribution and that of the work group he was involved with, we put together for this effort. Then brief live online demonstration and review of a few frequently asked questions that we've got up to now. And then if I haven't covered all the questions you had at that point, open it up for questions at the end. So, and if there are any questions as I'm going through, please let me know. I know there's a chat room we can get going, and maybe Marcy can let me know if we need to address something right away as opposed to right at the end. So here's an org chart with our section, the water quantity section, circled in red, showing you Corinne Fitting as the supervisor. You may recognize her name. And Phil, who's joining us there at the top as AD for the water planning section. So we're kind of new, that is the water quantity unit, to this water planning section. You see the other units here, water quality and monitoring and watersheds. They've been at it for a long time. However, our unit was created 2 or 3 years ago to bring together the water diversion program and the Aquifer Protection Act program, as well as stream flow regs and standards. And so everything doing with water quantity, keeping water in the streams with balanced use for out of stream usage. That's our mission. Now, what is a registered diversion? You know, this is right out of the statute. It helps just to quote it at this point. A diversion is any activity which causes, allows, or results in the withdrawal from, or the alteration, modification, or diminution of the instantaneous flows of the waters of the state. So this points out what the consumptive diversion is as opposed to the non-consumptive right here in the definition. So the consumptive diversion, which we're dealing with today, is the withdrawal from the waters of the state, the groundwaters or the surface waters. And the non-consumptive, which our unit doesn't even deal with anymore due to a reorg in the department a while ago, that's where you have the alteration, modification, or diminution of the instantaneous flows through. Usually it's stream flow or stream bed modifications, where you're moving a stream around a proposed building or putting in a culvert on a driveway or a road crossing, and you need to change that flow, but you're not really withdrawing it. You're not using it. You're just changing where it goes and when. So that's pretty important to get through for today's conversation. Also, there's an exemption, a big exemption for the consumptive diversion, which I've listed here. Anything less than 50,000 gallons per day is exempt, and the state diversion program won't touch it. So that gets rid of a lot of smaller withdrawals. 50,000 is a pretty large amount. So as far as registered diversions are those diversions that were grandfathered as of 1983 when the diversion statute came into it, the diversion program came into being. So anybody that was actively diverting at that point got their diversion grandfathered without much environmental review. And after they registered their diversion on a form. So that's how we came up with the term registered in this case. Anything, any diversion after that date, 1983, required a permit, which, as you'll see, we've been receiving reports on for quite some time. So why now? As I was mentioning, the statutes enabling diversion, registered diversion reporting have been on the books for quite some time, since 2001, matter of fact. But in order to start the program, we needed to develop a form and send a notice per statute to get that going. And as I'll go into a little bit later, we have started that to do that. And so the program is moving forward. It's also a priority in the Water Planning Council's recent state water plan. To prepare for the talk, I just did a quick search through the plan and found that the word registration was listed in 84 different pages of that plan. So it was a very prominent aspect of the plan, and high on their recommendations to get a handle on how much water is being diverted via registrations as opposed to permits. So we're going to be able to get a lot more accurate data once we get the registered diversions quantified. Because as some of you may know, when diversions were registered in '83, a lot of times they registered it on capacity of their diversion, not really how much was actually used, but how much could have been used based on the pipe size, let's say, or the channel that's bringing water into your plant. So it was on maximum usage, not really accurate. And all this updated, accurate information is going to allow us to get better modeling. We're currently developing some models with the USGS that's going to allow us to get a better handle on water usage within particular watersheds. And I also just want to point out that, relatively speaking, registrations deal with a lot more water. So just to quantify it, we have 260 active permits now. Anything after '83 that's permitted. For registrations, we have 1,800 different registrations. So there are a lot more registrations to be looked at than diversions. As I mentioned, we've been doing permit reporting for quite some time now. 260 annual daily reports come in every year, and in the past couple of years, we've been starting to look at those a little bit more in detail. Many of you have might have been getting emails or calls from me or my coworkers on questions about your permit reports. And another reporting program that's already come and gone was pursuant to Public Act 02102 back in early 2000s, where registrants were required to report monthly, not daily, but monthly use data for a 4-year period. Okay, here's a rather dense couple of pages in the statute book. And fortunately, I'm not going to expect anybody to read that. I'm going to split that up a little bit into some more discrete slides to come up. But I just wanted to show you the entirety of the language dealing with reporting. And a lot of this that you're looking at in jumbled form has to do with that 02102 Act that I told you about in the previous slide. So only some of this has to do with our current registration program for reporting. So Section A of 368A goes into the notice that's going to be required for reporting of registration data. And I just finished yesterday a draft form of that notice. And it should be approved pretty soon and probably out next month sometime. Keep an eye out for that. And the notice has to tell about the availability of the form that we'll be looking at, and also to say deadline for submission of the forms. And then down below there, you'll see that the deadline is 6 months. Within 6 months of the posting of that notice, and then annually thereafter by the 31st, sorry, I think that's a typo, of January. So Section B went into a little bit about the data expected in those reports. So the reported data on the forms that we've developed in consultation with DPH, Department of Ag, and PURA, and the working group that Wojtek was part of. It says that the data won't be any more frequent than daily. So it can't be you know, every 15 minutes or hourly, and that we are going to allow some estimates, engineered estimates, if there's no meter involved. Also, some exemptions, agricultural diversions were called out and saying that they definitely are going to be able to estimate their withdrawals. A lot of times they don't have the money or the wherewithal to install and calibrate and maintain meters. And it also called out a rather unique exemption for, as you can read, a very specific use for electric generating facilities utilizing fossil fuel. Don't know the background on that too much, so if anybody has any questions on that, we can look that up. And then finally, the section F, the working group, which Wojtek was part of, unfortunately, because he was a highly contributing member, came up with some great ideas that we incorporated into the form. You can see that we complied with the regulation that said we should have at least 5 registrants on the work group. We had 7, and they represented different kinds of registrations: public water, ag, industry, power, and irrigation, mainly golf courses, most of our irrigation. So we had somebody from Avon Golf, in that work group. And like I said, they did a great job, came up with some great ideas, and we're very thankful for their efforts. That was, Wojtek, you said a couple of years ago, you're right, most of it was October 2018, where we did a lot of that work in the form. And speaking of the form, a couple of static images of the form. I'm splitting it up into the top header here. I'm going to be going to a live demonstration, hopefully, if everything works out on the form. But you may recognize it, anybody that was reporting for permits. It's very similar. That was one of the big comments that the working group had, that the form be similar to what permittees were used to. And we took that to heart and utilized the existing form, modified it for registrations, and really spiffed it up with some good notes, instructions, and of course, we had to modify it so that we could upload it into a database that is going to be very useful to us to analyze the data. So that's the top form, all the contact information, information about what your diversion is, who you are, how much you're diverting, etc. And like I said, we're going to go into a little bit more detail later. This is the bottom part of the form where the water usage itself is recorded. As you can see, we're going to be requiring daily data, one value for 24-hour usage each day of the month. And this is months 1 through 6, and the other half of the year will be carried over similar form, as you'll see. Okay, so now's the time for the live demo. Let's see if I'm going to be able to share the screen. And here we go. Marcy, which button was it again? Oh, I see. Yep. Getting there. Okay. Can everybody see the web page now? So go in, find our main web page, search it out, Here's our homepage for the department, and then just put in water diversion reporting. Come up with a couple of choices. Actually, let's go to the water diversion program page, which is before that, just to show you a little bit about the program in general. You'll be able to read about what a consumptive versus non-consumptive diversion is. Some of the material I've already gone over, and some particular information about water diversion permitting. Many of you have probably seen this page before. I won't go into any detail on it. List of comprehensive list of all our registered diversions, permitted diversions, and then water diversion reporting information. This best management practices for golf course water use, just as a side here, it's pretty old, and we're going to be getting that updated. Not us, will be involved in an effort to get it updated. So just wanted to let you know about that. So let's go to the reporting information. Here's the reporting page itself. Some very helpful information on how to report, what our protocols are. As you can see, once completed for an entire cycle, the forms are to be printed, signed, and then scanned. Hopefully I'll have time to go over some facts that tell about updating this. Right now we're going to be allowing electronic signatures. We're learning a lot more about electronic signatures based on the conditions we're under today. And so you won't have to PDF the document and sign it wet, but you'll see an update there soon. Please don't send hard copy. Let's try and rely on electronic submittals to save paper. So here is the form. The old, or the 2019 form is still up, but this is the one you'll want to access, the 2020 form. As you can see, new format will allow both registered and permitted diversions. Come on. Now, it's not allowing me to see downloads because I think, there we go. Phil, you're in the way. Your thumbnail. Okay, I moved you. Let's see if we can open up. Here we go. Enable macros. It's a little slow. I'm thankful that I'm getting a clear signal to begin with, because I've got 3 other people utilizing my Wi-Fi in this house right now. So knock on wood. See if I can get full page. Here we go. Okay. So I think we've got a good screen, and no, this is the old one. This is 2019. Hold on. Sorry about that. Better. Better. All right. Now you can see the difference. with the old form to the new. I did that on purpose. It's not very big. There we go. And I'm going to be able to active here. Let's see. Yeah. There should be one other button to allow me to make changes. Anyway, you see fields here for a diversion permit, registration number, permittee and registrant name, the town, site name, a lot more information than was on the permit field. Drop downs for diversion status. Let's see if we can get that. Yeah, there we go. We're going to be requiring status. This is something that the work group was really instrumental on, defining good status for your different diversions to allow us to update our databases. Diversion type. Yeah, it's not really performing very quickly, so I don't know how much time I want to drill in on this. And then method of measurement. This is very critical. Is it estimated? Is it actual? We need to know that when we're reviewing for data quality. And then most importantly, your daily volume authorized. And then not quite as important, your max authorized rate of operation. Contact information. And then down here is where you enter your daily amount. So I put in up here, see if it works, 100, well, let's just put in 1 because it's in million gallons per day. So I put in 1 for million gallons per day. And then list on January 1st that I put in, I've used 0.9 million gallons per day. And now, yeah, it did red flag it. So I'm going to need to take a look at that. One of the features that we had in this spreadsheet was to red flag figures that exceeded the volume entered in that cell. So perhaps I'm not doing it quite right, but that's just a demonstration that, of course, didn't follow through right at the moment. So it's all electronic. That's the main message. You fill it in for the entire year. And then there's a space for comments below here if you have any particular comments that you need to let us know about. Space for an electronic signature, date, name, etc. So there you go. That is the live demonstration for now. And I'm going to get back to there. Okay. So I know we're coming up on that half-hour goal that I wanted to set, but some frequently asked questions. Do we want to have time to go through them? I have about 4 of them, Marcy, Wojtek. I can go right to questions from, okay, Wojtek says yes. So one of the big ones I got, and Wojtek was one of them, do I need to report my diversion if it was registered with a 0 capacity or withdrawal value because it was unproductive well at the time of registration or a non-consumptive impoundment only registration? So for the consumptive diversions that were listed or registered in 83 with a 0 capacity, we're going to recommend that those get surrendered, is what we call them. Because if you have a 0 capacity registered and you want to actually use that diversion for anything more than 0, you're going to need a permit, and the registration is moot. So, you know, we're going to need to talk with you about surrendering a form for that, and then we'll have to ask for a permit application. So for impoundments or structures that pass water downstream within the same basin, which is a one-time submittal of a list of what we would consider to be a non-consumptive diversion, but we still want to know about it, that would suffice. So a lot of times water companies have registered reservoirs that they don't consumptively withdraw from, but just transfer water down the watershed to their treatment plant where they do withdraw. But you won't have to report those. You'll just need to make a list, one-time list, and then we'll have that on file. So, yeah. So can a single list of any inactive registrations be submitted in lieu of reporting forms with all zeros? So this is in the case of your diversion where you're not using it now, but you did have a registration for a specified amount and you're not going to be using it in the near future. We're going to allow you to provide a list of all those types of registrations so that, again, we can have those on file, but you won't need to register those. I mean, you won't need to report those every year. Just trying to make it a little bit more easy and common sense here, save some people some time, because we're looking at it from a practical point of view. Should I report my registration if it was superseded by a permit because of modifications that were made to the registered diversion after the 83 process? Reporting, we'll still need to see that, but the reporting will be done under the permit and not the registration. A lot of times we get double permits, one for the registration that's superseded and one for the permit that incorporated it. And we don't want to double count that data. Now that is unless the permit has no reporting requirements. Some of our older permits predated our permit reporting program. So if your permit has no reporting requirements, then you'll need to report under the registration. Can I estimate my withdrawal if I don't have a meter to measure flow? And I spoke a little bit about that fact that the statute does specifically allow estimates. And I focus on the word here, engineered estimates. So the methodology for estimating has to be, has to follow some scientific methodology and not just be a back of the envelope guess. And we at the department want to look at that methodology, make sure that it's appropriate for that registration for the site. And the sooner you do that, the better. I know, as Wojtek said, people are already recording their 2020 data to be reported this upcoming January. And if you haven't let us know about your estimation methods, please do. Can I modify the reporting form for unique circumstances? The answer there is no. In order for us to upload the form and get the data into our database, it has to be read by a computer, and any kind of modifications to the form will cause that not to happen, and it'll get stuck. So if you do have some specific circumstances that really don't fit the reporting form, let us know, and we'll work with you on that. And then we have other facts on our website. Oh, I'm sorry, we will soon have other facts on our website because I just got done formulating our list and got about a dozen or so far, and always adding to that. So maybe with some of the questions I received now, we'll get some of those on the site for others. And there you go. I'll open it up for questions.
I have one that came through chat. The question asks, some existing diversion permittees also need to submit a copy of flow meter certifications annually. Will there be a way to also submit these electronically?
Yes. So that has to do with certifying the meter. Is that right? Testing and calibrating the meter. Is that what I heard?
It sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly those can be submitted electronically. I would encourage that, a matter of fact. We have been getting those in more and more electronically, and particularly if our out-of-office home sequestration continues, electronic submittal is encouraged.
Great. I have a question also about, I guess, withdrawing either a permit or a registration. How do we go about doing that?
Withdrawing, okay. Yeah, the term we use is surrender. We also used to use relinquish, I think.
Yes.
The term of art, yeah. However, in developing the form that we use now for surrendering, we found out that the statute really uses the word surrender, even though it has negative connotations, I think. But anyway, to be legal, we are using surrender. Get in touch with us. I have contact information on the next slide, and I can email you that form and fill it out, sign it, scan it, get it back to us. It's as simple as that. And then we'll take that form and update our database appropriately. I'll add that one to the facts. Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I just want to thank you very much. And here is my contact information. And perhaps the slides can be made available to everybody for their reference. I'm happy to answer any other questions. Give me a call, email me, and I'll help you out. And I just want to say good luck to everyone, CBIA, in these challenging times, getting up and running, getting back to normal, if and when that ever is going to happen. And thank you for your time. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wojtek or Debbie, anything else from the water team?
Nope, that's all we had. Thanks.
Okay. I want to remind everyone about next month's meeting. We have the another deep presentation, this time on the concierge program, however you say it, program. And they'll be able to make reservations for all of us at any state parks as part of their concierge services. Just kidding. You know, I started off the meeting with something about Chris, and I wanted to, many of you probably have not seen some of his writings, but I wanted to leave you today with something from his last column, and he called it Legislative Update, Social Distancing Edition. This goes way back to March 8th. Anyways, concerns about the novel coronavirus are diverse and lurid, enough to fill a coronavirus novel or several. Your legislative liaison writes this afternoon from the Sunshine State, where, as usual, climate change does not exist, but which at the moment is lacking sunshine and hand sanitizer as well. And we're feeling fine, thanks, after sitting in a crowded airport departure lounge for nearly 90 minutes and then joining a couple hundred total strangers in a pressurized aluminum tube traveling through the stratosphere at unimaginable speeds. They all seemed okay, as we're sure were all the folks who drove the rental car before us. Safer to check in on environmental legislation than add to the breathless and occasionally inaccurate reporting about public health concerns. Nothing to crow about, judging from a recent report we read referencing COVID-19. Anyways, and there's other things in that column, and one of the things that I used to do is send it along to a number of people where I work. Not so much just for the environmental information, but just the prose part of his column, and it was just wonderful. Does anybody else have anything else to add before we say goodbye? Marcy, do you have anything for the good of the order?
I do not.
Any of our chairs have anything else before we say goodbye? Well, okay then. Everybody stay safe. You know, as we're gradually reopening our state, we may not have to stay home, but some will choose to do so. Others will venture out, and we'll see what happens. But with that, have a good weekend and take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. That was great. Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, you too.
Nice job, everybody. Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.